Trading days, April 16th, 2016. First thing we'll do is just talk a minute about the world events. Unfortunately, Japan got hit by two substantial earthquakes. We'd forecast this time period as being one that'll be prone for geophysical activity like earthquakes or volcanoes. When we do this type of thing, we never know the place. We just know the approximate time within a few weeks. So that's happened, and with the astrology over the next few days, we could see more extensive earthquakes. And again, we never know where. At least I don't. If we look at the chart that we have in front of us, this is a daily chart of the SP 500, and just let me say a couple of things here. First of all, there is a couple of key dates, and they were February the 11th, where we had the low, and it just took off from there. Now, what happened on February 11th? We found out that Janet Yellen made a couple of very important phone calls on February the 11th. The first one was from 2 to 2:40 in the afternoon, and that phone call was to Mark Carney, the governor of the Bank of England. If these were intraday charts, you would see the market moving up right after that call. February the 12th, the next day, 11 o'clock to 11:40, another phone call was placed, this time to Mario Draghi, president of the European Central Bank, and the market moved up even more. Should we be suspicious about this type of unknown communication to the general population? Yes, we should. Let's move ahead here and look at April the 11th. Well, this should still be in the news. You could probably still Google this. There was a surprise meeting with Janet Yellen and Obama. I think Biden was there as well, and that was on Monday, April the 11th, and from there, stocks took off. So this looks like Janet's telling something that is being beneficial for the markets. Let's just leave it at that. Let me add that the 11th day of each month can be a very important day. Can be a day that will get a swing. Always look for swings on the 11th. Sometimes there'll be nothing. Sometimes it'll be very important, like 9/11. Okay, what else do we want to say on this chart? We've got two parallels, very important parallels, and they are, number one, these green squares. This is Jupiter parallel Uranus. Now, this is first of all, parallels is an aspect of declination, and I'll include a definition in the written notes. Just look at it as another aspect for now, although technically it's a position. So we have Jupiter parallel Uranus, and this would tend to be exaggerated claims and expansion. It could be big surprises, sudden reversals, with these two planets moving very, very slowly. Quite possible that this is going to be identifying a critical point in a primary cycle. Now, that said, we're 10 weeks along, or going to be entering the 10th week this week. we're in the time frame where we could be seeing a top, or a top to this primary cycle. That's Jupiter parallel Uranus. I mean, in general, Jupiter parallel Uranus is a very positive aspect. In this instance, Jupiter is in Virgo, where it's in its declination, where it's in its detriment, and in its detriment, it's where it works with the least power, so it may not be as buoyant as one would expect. The other parallel, a little more sinister, is Saturn parallel to Pluto. Now, Saturn is all about control, central authority, and discipline, and Pluto is power. It is really power to the nth degree, extreme power. This is in Capricorn, and it really represents changes that happen that can't be undone. There's a certain energy about Pluto as well that just tears things, maybe say that it tears things down to build them up anew. So these are happening. Here's the first instance, this orange square. You'll see it was near the bottom on February the 11th. And I don't want to mention dates here. People get hung up on the date. The next 2 weeks is going to be, in my view, problematic. If I put on the dates, people tend to look at that date, and then it's all over the day after, when in effect it isn't all over. It could be affecting things for a couple of weeks. Now, that's true of the 2 retrogrades we're going to mention later on in our discussion. If I look at this chart and forget about any astrology, this looks like a very positive chart. So kind of tying into that Jupiter-Uranus parallel. The 45, or pardon me, the 15 degree simple moving average has dipped to a low and is now come up, and price is above it. And the 15 is above the 45. They're both pointing up. Pardon me. This looks like a very positive outcome. We have hit a downtrending line, but really to this point, this only had 2 points, and I like 3. Basically, this is pointing to a market that's moving up, if one did not look at the astrology. Let's look at a couple of other things here that I do with a chart like this. And what I do, I center the moving average when I'm looking for other cycles. So let's look at this. We've got the low here, this 15-day moving average. Well, the low is, one would think that would be closer to the middle of these 2 lows. So if you center the moving averages, and by centering it, if I have a 15-day moving average, we'll just take 7 days, and then we'll look at this 45-degree moving average, and we'll move it back halfway, and now we see these moving averages really tie in to the lows around the primary cycle lows. So if the point I'm trying to raise here is if you're looking for new cycles, other cycles, which I do all the time, I typically center the moving averages and get a better idea where the cycles lie, just by using the moving averages. There's other things I do with this too, is detrending it as well, but we'll leave that for another day. So we're waiting for the news out of Qatar. On oil, that's going to really affect everything. And in my view, with the two retrogrades and the other aspects around these days, I would expect that an agreement will not be reached, and which would be unfavorable to the stock market. If I'm wrong, then this could very well carry on and move up to and try and get to the all-time high, which you recall was back on May the 20th, the all-time high for the SP 500, that is. The one last thing I'll mention before I leave this section, we had a Fibonacci grid on here, and it was based on the move down, these two black squares here and all the way down to here. That's what this Fibonacci grid is based on, and price is stopped at that level. You can see it kind of came down. Yellen made the phone calls. It came up. It did break through briefly, very briefly, and it did come up and almost touch this downtrending line. Didn't break it, and then fell back below the start of this Fibonacci grid. So we may be getting some congestion here. Maybe this is the high for this primary cycle. That's a strong possibility if I look at the astrology. And again, if I don't look at the astrology and just look at the moving averages and other things within the chart, it would tell me full speed ahead, we're going higher. I'm of the belief that the astros are pointing to a move down, a change in trend and a move down. Okay, that's all I'm going to say on this one, and thank you very much for listening.